The Nightfall Motel, Part 1 of 10. Hello everyone, welcome to the unsettling lullaby. I'm your guide into the darkest corners of the world, where shadows whisper and silence screams. Are you prepared to embrace the dark? If you're drawn to the world of true crime and unsolved mysteries, join our circle. Subscribe and enable all notifications. I am with you, and our lullaby starts right now. Tonight I bring you a story about a place where time stands still. A motel on a desert highway where travelers check in but never check out. Where room keys open doors to impossible places. And where the night clerk knows exactly what you're running from. This is the story of the Nightfall Motel and the people who disappeared along Route 66. Our story begins now. June 3, 2019. Route 66, New Mexico. Sarah Chen was driving through the night, trying to put as many miles as possible between herself and Los Angeles. Her marriage had ended badly. Her job had ended worse. She had thrown everything she owned into her Honda Civic and pointed it east, with no particular destination in mind except anywhere else. By midnight, she was somewhere in the New Mexico desert. Route 66 stretched ahead of her, empty and dark. No other cars. No lights except her headlights cutting through the darkness. Just the highway, the desert, and the stars overhead. She had been driving for 14 hours straight. Her eyes were burning. Her back ached. The coffee she'd been drinking all day had stopped working hours ago. She needed to stop, needed to sleep. But every town she'd passed had looked too small, too isolated, too much like the kind of place where a woman traveling alone might not be safe. Then she saw it, a neon sign glowing in the darkness, Nightfall Motel, vacancy. The sign flickered slightly, casting red and blue light across the desert. Below the main sign, smaller letters read, Clean ROOMS, reasonable rates, open 24 hours. Sarah almost drove past. Something about the motel felt off. It looked too old-fashioned, like something from the 1950s that had been frozen in time. The kind of place that probably had bed bugs and questionable hygiene. But her exhaustion won out over her caution. She pulled into the parking lot. The lot was about half full, maybe a dozen cars scattered across the spaces. That was reassuring. Other people were staying here. She wouldn't be alone. She parked near the office and got out, stretching her cramped muscles. The motel was a classic two-story horseshoe design. 30 rooms arranged around a central courtyard with a pool that was drained and empty. The building itself was stucco painted a faded turquoise, with wooden doors painted brown and brass numbers nailed to each one. Everything had a worn, weathered look, like it had been sitting in the desert sun for decades. The office was small, dimly lit, decorated in a style that Sarah's grandmother might have called dated. Wood paneling on the walls. A brown carpet that had probably been orange in 1975. A desk with an ancient computer monitor sitting next to an even more ancient guest registry. An actual physical book where people signed their names. Behind the desk sat a man in his 60s, thin and pale, wearing a white shirt and bolo tie. He looked up when Sarah entered, his smile revealing perfectly white teeth that seemed too perfect for someone his age. "Welcome to the Nightfall Motel," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced like a radio announcer from a bygone era. "Checking in for the night." "Just one night," Sarah confirmed. "Single room, non-smoking if you have it." "Of course, I have a lovely room on the second floor. Room 217. Quiet, good view of the desert, you'll sleep well there." He slid the old-fashioned guest registry across the desk along with a pen. Sarah hesitated. In the age of digital check-ins and online reservations, actually signing her name in a physical book felt strangely intimate. But she was too tired to care. She signed. Sarah Chen, Los Angeles, CA. The clerk, his name tag read Mr. Graves, studied her signature for a moment, his smile never wavering. Leaving Los Angeles, or running from it? Sarah felt a chill. "Excuse me." "Forgive me," Mr. Graves said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. I've worked the night desk for many years. You learn to read people, and I can always tell when someone is running from something or towards something, usually both. I'm just passing through, Sarah said curtly. How much for the room? $40. Cash preferred, though we do take cards if necessary. $40 was suspiciously cheap, even for a rundown motel in the middle of nowhere. But Sarah was too exhausted to question it. She paid in cash, took the brass key Mr. Graves offered, an actual metal key, not a key card, and headed to her room. Room 217 was on the second floor, accessed by an exterior staircase. Sarah climbed the stairs, noting that despite the dozen cars in the parking lot, she hadn't seen a single other person. No one coming or going from their rooms. No one at the pool. No one anywhere. She unlocked room 217 and stepped inside. The room was exactly what she expected from a place like this. Small. One double bed with a faded floral bedspread. A nightstand with a lamp and a Gideon Bible. A dresser with a TV that was definitely not flat screen. A bathroom with a shower tub combo and tiles that were probably once white but now had a yellowish tinge. But it was clean. Mr. Graves hadn't lied about that. The sheets looked fresh. The carpet had been vacuumed. There was no smell of cigarettes or mold or the dozens of unpleasant odors that usually inhabited cheap motels. Sarah was so tired she barely managed to brush her teeth and change into pajamas before collapsing onto the bed. The mattress was surprisingly comfortable. The room was quiet. She was asleep within minutes. She woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. She checked her phone, 9:47 a.m. She had slept for almost 10 hours, the best sleep she'd had in months. She felt refreshed, energized, ready to continue her journey. Sarah showered, dressed, and packed her things. Time to check out and get back on the road. She stepped outside and stopped. The parking lot was still half full. The same dozen cars she'd seen last night in exactly the same positions, which was odd. Surely some people would have checked out by now. It was nearly 10 in the morning. Most motels had checkout by 11. She walked down the exterior corridor, planning to drop her key at the office before leaving. As she passed the other rooms, she noticed something strange. Every door was closed. Every curtain was drawn. There were no sounds of people moving around, no TV noise, no conversation, just silence. When she reached the office, Mr. Graves was still behind the desk, still wearing the same white shirt and bolo tie, still wearing that perfect smile. "Checking out?" he asked pleasantly. "Yes," Sarah said, placing the key on the desk. "Thanks for the room, I slept great." "I told you that you would." Mr. Graves made no move to process her checkout. He just sat there smiling. "Most people do, sleep very well here, very deeply." Sarah waited. "Is there paperwork or something?" "Oh no, no paperwork, you're all set." But still he didn't move, just kept smiling that unsettling smile. "Okay then," Sarah said, backing toward the door. "Thanks again." She hurried to her car, eager to get back on the road. She started the engine, put it in reverse, and backed out of her parking space. She drove toward the exit, following the driveway that curved around the motel and led back to Route 66. But when she reached the spot where the driveway should have met the highway, there was no highway, just more desert. The road, Route 66, the road she had driven in on last night, was gone. Sarah stopped the car, confused. She must have gotten turned around somehow. She circled the motel again, looking for the exit. But every direction led to the same thing, desert. Endless empty desert with no road, no highway, no way out. She tried her GPS. No signal. She tried her phone. No service. She tried to remember exactly how she'd driven in last night, but the memory was fuzzy, as if she'd been more exhausted than she'd realized. Other cars were parked here. Other people must have figured out how to leave. She would go back to the office and ask Mr. Graves for directions. But when she parked and walked to the office, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Through the window, she could see Mr. Graves behind the desk, and he was talking to someone, a woman in business clothes who was signing the guest registry. Sarah burst into the office. "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I need help. I can't find the exit. How do I get back to Route 66? Mr. Graves looked at her with that same perfect smile. "Route 66? I'm afraid you're mistaken. There's no highway here. There's only the motel." "But I drove in last night. I came from the highway." "Did you?" Mr. Graves asked, his smile never wavering. "Or did you drive here from somewhere else? Somewhere you were trying to leave? Somewhere you were running from?" Sarah backed away. The woman who had been checking in was watching her with an odd expression. Not concern, not confusion, just recognition, as if she understood exactly what Sarah was feeling. "What is this place?" Sarah whispered. "This," Mr. Graves said, "is the Nightfall Motel, where weary travelers find rest, where those who are running can finally stop. Welcome, Ms. Chen. You're going to be staying with us for quite some time." In part 2, Sarah discovers she's not alone, and the other guests have been trapped here far longer than one night. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. Check-in is easy. Check-out is impossible. The Nightfall Motel, Part 2 of 10. Welcome back to the unsettling lullaby. Sarah Chen discovered she cannot leave the Nightfall Motel. The highway has vanished, and Mr. Graves says she's staying for quite some time. Today, she meets the other guests who have been trapped here far longer than one night. This is Part 2, I Am With You, and the nightmare deepens. Now. Sarah ran from the office, her heart pounding. This had to be a misunderstanding, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. She would get in her car, drive in any direction, and eventually find the highway. She had to. She drove north. After 15 minutes of bouncing across the desert, dodging cacti and rocks, the motel appeared ahead of her. She was back where she started. She tried east. Same result. South. West. No matter which direction she drove, no matter how far, she always ended up back at the Nightfall Motel. The building sat in the center of an invisible circle, and that circle was her new prison. After the fourth attempt, Sarah parked and sat in her car, trying not to panic. Her phone still showed no service. Her GPS still couldn't find any satellites. It was as if the entire world beyond this motel had simply ceased to exist. She noticed movement. A man was walking across the parking lot toward the pool area. Middle-aged, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, carrying a coffee mug. He moved with the casual ease of someone who had been here a while. Not a new arrival frantically trying to escape like Sarah. Someone who had settled in. Sarah got out of her car and followed him. He sat down at one of the rusted metal tables near the empty pool, sipping his coffee and looking out at the desert as if he were enjoying a perfectly normal morning. "Excuse me," Sarah called out. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I need help. I can't find the exit. Do you know how to get out of here?" The man looked at her with tired, knowing eyes. "You just checked in last night, didn't you?" "Yes, how did you know?" "Because you're still trying to leave." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "You might as well sit down. Fighting it just makes the first few days harder." "First few days?" Sarah's voice rose. "I'm not staying here for days. I'm leaving today. I just need to find the road." "There is no road, not anymore, not for us." The man extended his hand. "Marcus Webb, I've been here for 43 days or maybe 44. Hard to keep track." Sarah sat down slowly, her legs weak. 43 days? You've been trapped here for over a month." "Yep, checked in on April 20th, 2019. Drove in from Texas, heading to California for my daughter's wedding. Never made it. She probably thinks I'm dead. Maybe I am. Haven't figured that part out yet." "This is insane. We need to call the police. We need to." "No phones work here," Marcus interrupted. "No internet, no GPS, no outside communication at all. And before you ask, yes, people have tried walking out. Doesn't work any better than driving. You walk for hours and end up back here. This place. It's like a loop, or a trap, or both. Sarah's mind was racing. How many people are here? Counting you, 14 now. We lost one last week. Lost? What do you mean lost? Marcus's expression darkened. Room 101, that's what we call it. Once every week or two, Mr. Graves calls someone to the office, tells them there's been a mistake with their room, gives them a new key, room 101, and once someone goes into room 101, he shook his head. They don't come back. Where do they go? We don't know. Some people think room 101 is the way out. Others think it's something worse. But no one who's gone in has ever come back to tell us. Sarah stood up abruptly. This is crazy. I'm going to break a window. I'm going to smash through a wall. There has to be a way out. Go ahead and try, Marcus said wearily. You'll figure it out eventually. The walls here don't break. The windows don't shatter. You can pound on them all day and not leave a mark. This place, it's not normal. It's not part of the regular world. It's somewhere else. Somewhere in between. Over the next few hours, Sarah met the other guests. There was Elena Martinez, a nurse from Arizona who had been here for 96 days. Robert Chen, no relation to Sarah, a traveling salesman who had been here since January, over 5 months. Jennifer Park, a college student who had been here for 2 weeks and still cried herself to sleep every night. They all had the same story. They had been driving on Route 66 late at night, exhausted, looking for a place to rest. They had seen the vacancy sign. They had checked in. They had slept. And when they woke up, they were trapped. Why us? Sarah asked. They were gathered in the courtyard, 9 of the 14 guests. The others apparently preferred to stay in their rooms, withdrawn into isolation and despair. Why did this place trap us specifically? I've thought about that a lot, Elena said. She was in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. I think the motel takes people who are running from something, people who are looking to escape. I was running from an abusive marriage. Marcus was avoiding family responsibilities. Robert was hiding from debt. We all came here because we wanted to disappear, and the motel gave us exactly what we wanted. But I don't want to disappear, Sarah protested. I just wanted a fresh start. Same thing, Elena said softly. You wanted to leave your old life behind, become someone new, start over. The Nightfall Motel specializes in people like us, people who are between lives, between identities, between who they were and who they want to be. And somehow it traps us in that in-between space. Robert leaned forward. There's something else. The motel is changing us, slowly. Have you noticed that you don't get hungry as often? That you don't get tired at normal times? That when you look in the mirror, you look a little bit off? Sarah realized with a chill that he was right. She had barely thought about food all day. She wasn't tired, even though she'd been awake for hours. And when she had glanced in her car's mirror earlier, her reflection had seemed slightly wrong. The same face, but somehow different. As if she were looking at a copy of herself that was just slightly out of focus. What's happening to us? She whispered. We're becoming part of the motel, Elena said. The longer you stay, the more you fade. I've seen it with the people who have been here longest. They get quieter, more distant, like they're losing themselves piece by piece. And eventually Mr. Graves calls them to room 101, and that's the end. So we just wait here until we fade away completely. Sarah couldn't accept it. There has to be a way out. There has to be something we can do. Marcus looked at her with something like pity. We've all felt that way at first, full of determination to escape, but the motel is patient. It waits. And eventually you stop fighting. You settle in, you accept it, because what else can you do? I can refuse to accept it, Sarah said firmly. I can keep looking for a way out, and I'm not going anywhere near room 101. That night, lying in her bed in room 217, Sarah heard sounds from the other rooms. Crying, packing, conversations with no one. The sounds of people slowly losing their minds. She wondered how long it would be before she sounded like that too. She got up and looked out her window. The parking lot was lit by a few flickering lights. The neon vacancy sign glowed red and blue, and standing in the parking lot looking up at the second floor was Mr. Graves. He was perfectly still, his white shirt and bolo tie illuminated by the neon. He was watching the rooms, watching his guests, making sure no one tried anything foolish. When his eyes met Sarah's through the window, he smiled and raised one hand in a small wave. Then he turned and walked back to the office, his footsteps making no sound on the pavement. Sarah closed the curtain and sat on her bed, her mind racing. There had to be a pattern, a rule, a loophole. Every prison had one. She just had to find it. She thought about what Alina had said. The motel takes people who are running from something, people who want to escape their old lives. What if the key to leaving was to stop running, to face whatever you came here to escape? But Sarah didn't want to face her failed marriage. She didn't want to think about her lost job or her abandoned life in Los Angeles. She had come here specifically to leave all that behind, which meant the motel had trapped her in the one place she couldn't escape from, herself. As Sarah lay back down, trying to sleep, she heard something new. Music. Faint, crackling like it was coming from an old radio. A song from the 1950s, the kind of thing that would have played when this motel was new. She couldn't identify the song, but the lyrics were clear enough. Check in, but never leave. The Nightfall Motel will help you grieve. Your old life's gone, your new one's here. Welcome, welcome, have no fear. The music faded, and in the silence that followed, Sarah heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps, coming toward her room, stopping outside her door. A shadow appeared in the crack beneath her door. Someone or something was standing right outside. She held her breath. The doorknob slowly turned. She had locked it. The lock clicked open anyway. The door began to swing inward. And Sarah realized that the worst thing about the Nightfall Motel wasn't that you couldn't leave. It was that you weren't alone in your room. You were never alone. The motel was always with you, always watching, always waiting. In part 3, Sarah discovers the history of the Nightfall Motel and learns that escaping isn't about finding an exit. It's about understanding what the motel really is. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. The doors are always open. The Nightfall Motel, Part 3 of 10. Welcome back to the unsettling lullaby. Sarah Chen is trapped with 13 other souls at the Nightfall Motel, slowly fatting into something else. Today, she discovers the motel's dark history and learns that escape requires understanding what this place truly is. This is Part 3, I Am With You, and the past reveals itself. Now. The door to room 217 swung open slowly. Sarah pressed herself against the headboard, her breath caught in her throat. The hallway lights spilled into the room, creating a rectangle of yellow on the carpet. But no one entered. The doorway was empty. "Hello," Sarah called out, her voice shaking. No response. Just the creak of the door and the distant hum of the motel's air conditioning system. After a long moment, the door slowly swung closed again, the lock clicking back into place. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat on the bed with her back to the wall, watching the door, waiting for it to open again. But it didn't. Whatever had visited her room, if anything had, was gone. Morning came slowly. Sarah watched through the window as the desert sky lightened from black to deep blue to the pale orange of sunrise. She had counted the hours. From full dark to full light had taken exactly 12 hours. Normal, which somehow made everything else feel even more wrong. She found Marcus in the breakfast area, a small room off the main office with coffee, stale donuts, and a few tables. He was reading a newspaper that was dated April 20, 2019. The day he had checked in. The newspaper never changed, he explained. Always the same date, same headlines, same weather report promising sunshine and temperatures in the mid-70s. I need to know the history of this place, Sarah said, sitting across from him. How long has this motel been here? Who built it? There has to be some explanation for what's happening. Marcus looked up from his newspaper. You're in the research phase. Everyone goes through it, trying to find rational answers to irrational questions. I spent my first 2 weeks digging through everything I could find in the office. Want to know what I learned? Yes. Nothing useful, but I'll show you anyway, come on. He led her to a storage room behind the main office. The door was unlocked. Inside were filing cabinets, boxes of old records, maintenance logs, and guest registries going back decades. Marcus pulled out a heavy leather-bound book. Original guest registry. Started in 1952 when the motel opened. Take a look. Sarah opened the book. The first entry was dated June 15, 1952. James and Martha Henderson, Phoenix, Arizona. Below it, dozens more entries, hundreds, thousands of guests who had stayed at the Nightfall Motel over the years. She flipped through the pages, watching the decades pass. The 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s. Then she noticed something strange. Some entries had a small symbol next to them, a circle with a line through it, like the no entry sign or a prohibition symbol. What does this mean? She asked, pointing to one of the marked entries. I don't know for sure, Marcus said, but I counted. There are 327 entries with that symbol, all different people, different years, spread out over the motel's entire history. And here's the weird part. I cross-referenced them with missing persons reports I found in old newspapers Mr. Graves keeps in the office. Every single person with that symbol next to their name was reported missing. They checked into the Nightfall Motel and never checked out. Sarah felt cold. So this has been happening since the beginning, since 1952. At least, maybe longer. The motel might have existed under a different name before that. I found references in some old maps to a place called the Sunset Inn at this location back in the 1930s. But all those records are gone, like someone deliberately erased the early history. Sarah continued flipping through the registry. She found her own name on the most recent page, and next to it, written in red ink, was that same symbol, a circle with a line through it. We're marked, she whispered. We're going to join that list of 327 missing people. Unless we figure out what this place is and how to beat it, Marcus agreed. That's why I'm showing you this. You need to understand what we're up against. They spent the next several hours going through the files. Sarah found construction documents from 1952 showing the motel's original blueprints. The building had been designed by an architect named Thomas Graves, the same last name as Mr. Graves, the night clerk. Family business, Sarah wondered aloud. Maybe, or maybe Graves isn't a person at all. Maybe it's something else wearing a name like a costume. In another box, Sarah found photographs from the motel's opening day. A ribbon-cutting ceremony, local officials smiling for the camera, and standing in the background, wearing the same white shirt and bolo tie with that same perfect smile, Mr. Graves, looking exactly the same as he did now, 70 years later. He doesn't age, Sarah said. He's been here since the beginning, looking exactly the same. Neither do we, apparently, Marcus pointed out. I haven't needed a shave since I got here. My hair hasn't grown. I'm wearing the same clothes I checked in with, and they never get dirty. We're frozen, suspended, like insects in amber. Alina appeared in the doorway. You two should come see this. Jennifer found something. They followed Alina to room 118, where Jennifer Park, the college student, had discovered something behind the mirror in her bathroom. The mirror had come loose from the wall, and behind it was carved a message. The motel feeds ON transition. Stay who you are. What does that mean? Jennifer asked. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was a spark of hope in her voice. Is it telling us how to escape? Sarah stared at the message. Transition. We're all in transition. We're all between lives, between who we were and who we wanted to become. That's what Alina said. The motel takes people who are running from something, people who are trying to change. So the motel feeds on that, Marcus said slowly. On the energy of transformation, on people who are in flux, and it traps us in that in-between state. We're neither who we were nor who we wanted to be. We're stuck in the middle. Stay who you are, Sarah repeated. That's the advice. Don't change, don't transform, stay yourself. But how? Jennifer asked. How do you stay yourself when everything about this place makes you feel like you're disappearing? Before anyone could answer, they heard a sound over the motel's speaker system, a chime like a bell. Then Mr. Graves's smooth voice. Would Sarah Chen please come to the front office? Sarah Chen to the front office, please. Everyone in the room froze. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm. Don't go. When he calls you to the office, it's usually to give you the key to room 101. Don't take it. But Sarah pulled away. If I don't go, what happens? Does he come to get me? Do I just hide in my room forever? No, I'm going, and I'm going to get answers. She walked to the office, her heart pounding. Mr. Graves was behind the desk, that perpetual smile on his face. On the desk in front of him was a single brass key with a tag reading 101. Ms. Chen, he said warmly, thank you for coming. I'm afraid there's been a problem with your room. Room 217 is experiencing some maintenance issues. I'd like to move you to a different room. Room 101. Much more comfortable. You'll find it quite transformative. I'm not taking that key, Sarah said firmly. And you're going to tell me what this place is, what you are, and how we can leave. Mr. Graves's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and ancient. You want the truth? Very well. This motel is a way station, a place between places. Every road has them, spots where the boundary between one world and another grows thin. This particular spot has been special for a very long time. Long before there was a motel, long before there was a road. This place has always drawn travelers. And those travelers who are uncertain, who are changing, who are running from themselves, they fall through the cracks. Into here, into me. Into you. You're not the motel's owner. You are the motel. I am the consciousness that inhabits this space, Mr. Graves agreed. I have worn many forms over the years, many names, many faces, but the purpose remains the same. I provide rest for the weary, shelter for the lost, and in return I consume what they no longer need, their old selves, their past identities, their transformation energy. It's a fair exchange. It's not an exchange if we didn't agree to it, Sarah shot back. We just wanted a place to sleep for one night. But you wanted more than that, didn't you? Mr. Graves leaned forward. You wanted to disappear, to become someone new, to leave Sarah Chen from Lowe's Angels behind and emerge as someone different, someone better. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted. A place where your old self can die and your new self can be born. Room 101 is where that transformation completes, where you finally let go of who you were. And what happens to the people who go into room 101? They transcend. They move beyond. They become part of the motel, part of me, part of this eternal space between roads. They find peace. You mean they die? Death is such a limited concept. They exist, just differently. Sarah backed toward the door. I'm not going into room 101, and I'm going to find a way out of here for all of us. There is no way out, Mr. Graves said, his smile finally fading. There is only acceptance or resistance, and resistance only makes the process longer, more painful. You'll understand eventually. They all do. The motel is patient, and in the end, everyone walks through the door of room 101. Everyone. Sarah ran from the office. She had her answer. The motel was alive. It fed on people in transition, and room 101 was where it digested them completely. But knowing what it was didn't tell her how to escape it. That night, gathered with the other guests, Sarah shared what she'd learned. The reactions ranged from despair to anger to resignation. But one person had a theory. Robert Chen, the traveling salesman who had been here the longest. If the motel feeds on transformation, he said, then maybe the key to escaping is to complete your transformation. Not in room 101, but outside of it. Become fully who you wanted to be. Stop being in transition, become stable, solid, and then maybe, just maybe, the motel will have nothing left to feed on, nothing left to trap, and it will have to let us go. But how do we transform when we're stuck here? Alina asked. How do we become who we want to be when we're frozen in this in-between space? Sarah thought about the message carved behind the mirror. Stay who you are. Don't change. But Robert was suggesting the opposite, change completely, which was right. Unless they were both right. Don't change. Complete your change. The answer wasn't about being static or transforming. It was about being whole, being complete, being fully yourself one way or another. We need to make a choice, Sarah said. Either fully embrace who we were or fully become who we want to be. No more in between. No more uncertainty. The motel traps us because we're neither one thing nor another, so we become one or the other, completely. And how do we do that? Marcus asked. Sarah looked at the key to room 217 in her hand. Then she looked at the other guests, all of them trapped, all of them fatting. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'm going to figure it out, before Mr. Graves calls us one by one to room 101. In part 4, Sarah devises a plan to help the guests become whole again, and discovers that the motel has defenses against anyone who tries to escape. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. The transformation begins. The Nightfall Motel, Part 4 of 10. Welcome back to the unsettling lullaby. Sarah has learned the truth. The Nightfall Motel feeds on people in transition, keeping them trapped in an in-between state. Today, she devises a plan to help the guests become whole again, but the motel has defenses against those who try to escape. This is Part 4. I am with you, and the resistance begins. Now. Sarah spent the next day talking to every guest individually, learning their stories, understanding what each of them was running from and what they hoped to become. She needed to know who they were, truly were, before she could help them become whole. Marcus Webb had been running from responsibility. His daughter's wedding was supposed to be the moment he stepped up, walked her down the aisle, gave the father of the bride speech. But he was terrified of failing her again like he'd failed her throughout her childhood with his drinking and his absences. So he had gotten in his car and just kept driving, away from Texas, away from his family, away from the man he didn't want to be. I was going to turn around, Marcus said, staring at his cold coffee. I swear I was. I just needed one night to clear my head, and then I woke up here. Alina Martinez had been running from her husband. 23 years of marriage to a man who controlled every aspect of her life. What she wore, who she talked to, where she went. She had finally worked up the courage to leave, packed a bag while he was at work and drove away. She was heading to her sister's house in California, ready to start over, ready to be free. I thought I was being brave, Alina said, but maybe I was just being a coward, running away instead of standing up to him. Maybe that's why the motel caught me, because I was neither married nor divorced, neither trapped nor free, just between. Robert Chen had been running from debt. Business had gone bad. Creditors were calling. His house was in foreclosure. His wife had left him, taking the kids. He had nothing left, so he'd loaded up his car with samples from his failed business and hit the road, planning to what? Start over, disappear. He hadn't decided yet. That's why the motel had him. Jennifer Park had been running from expectations. Her parents wanted her to be a doctor. She wanted to be an artist. The pressure had built and built until she'd cracked. She dropped out of college mid-semester and started driving west, with no plan except to not be who her parents wanted her to be. But she didn't know who she wanted to be instead. She was running from one identity without having another to run toward. Story after story. 13 people all caught in the middle of transformation, all incomplete, All perfect food for the Nightfall Motel. "Here's what we're going to do," Sarah announced to the group that evening. They were gathered in the courtyard as the desert sun set behind them. "Each of us needs to make a choice. Either go back to being who we were, fully, completely, with no regrets, or become who we wanted to be. But we can't be both. We can't be in between anymore." "How?" Jennifer asked. "We can't go back. We're literally trapped here." "Physically, yes, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we can still make that choice. We can still commit to an identity. And once we're whole, once we're no longer in transition, the motel should lose its hold on us." "Should," Marcus emphasized, "but you don't know for sure." "No," Sarah admitted. "I don't. But staying here and slowly fatting until Mr. Graves calls us to room 101 isn't an option. So we try. We each make our choice and commit to it completely." Alina spoke up. "I ran from my husband, but running didn't make me free. I need to go back mentally, except that I'm still married. Stop trying to escape. Become the person I was fully, without resentment. Maybe that will make me whole." "No," Jennifer said suddenly. "That's wrong. You shouldn't have to go back to being abused. You should complete your journey forward, declare yourself divorced. In your heart and your mind, make it real. You're not Alina Martinez, trapped wife. You're Alina Martinez, free woman, decide it, believe it, be it completely." Alina looked uncertain. "But I never filed papers. I never made it official." "Papers don't make you free," Sarah said. "Your decision makes you free. The motel trapped you because you were uncertain. So be certain. Choose freedom and own it completely." Over the next several hours, each guest made their choice. Marcus decided to embrace being the father who showed up late but showed up anyway. Robert accepted his bankruptcy and failure, letting go of the businessman identity he'd been clinging to. Jennifer declared herself an artist, regardless of her parents' approval or anyone's expectations. Sarah worked with each of them, helping them articulate their choice, helping them feel it deeply, helping them commit. And as each person made their choice, truly made it with full conviction, something changed in them. A subtle shift. They looked more solid, more present, less like ghosts and more like real people. But the motel noticed. That night the temperature dropped. Not outside, the desert was still warm, but inside the motel. The rooms became cold, far colder than any air conditioning could explain. Frost formed on the windows. Their breath came out in clouds. And the doors started opening and closing randomly. Room doors slamming, closet doors creaking, the office door swinging wide then crashing shut. The sound echoed through the night like gunshots. Mr. Graves appeared in the courtyard. He looked different. His perfect smile was gone, replaced by something cold and predatory. His eyes were completely black, reflecting no light. And when he spoke, his voice had harmonics, multiple voices layered on top of each other, as if dozens of people were speaking through his mouth at once. "You're disrupting the balance," he said, the voices echoing. "You're trying to become whole. That's not permitted. You belong to the motel. You belong to me." "We belong to ourselves," Sarah said, stepping forward. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "You trapped us because we were incomplete, but we're completing ourselves. We're making ourselves whole, and when we're whole, you have nothing to feed on." "Incorrect." Mr. Graves raised one hand, and behind him a door appeared in the air. Not attached to any wall or building, just floating there, a wooden door with brass handle and the number 101 on it. "You misunderstand the nature of transformation. You cannot complete it on your own. You need passage. You need transition. You need room 101. The door swung open. Beyond it was not a room but a void, a space of swirling darkness and impossible colors. And from that void came whispers. Hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, all calling, all beckoning. "Come inside," the voices said. "Complete your journey. Become what you're meant to be. We're waiting. We're all waiting." Sarah recognized some of the voices. The 327 people marked in the registry. The ones who had gone into room 101 and never returned. They were still there, still calling, still trapped. "They're not free," Sarah said, understanding. "Room 101 doesn't complete the transformation. It consumes it. You eat the energy of change and leave nothing behind but echoes." "I preserve them," Mr. Graves corrected. "They exist eternally in the space between what they were and what they wanted to be, perfectly suspended, perfectly preserved. It's an act of mercy, really. In the outside world, transformation is painful, difficult, often incomplete. Here they can exist in that transformative state forever. It's beautiful." "It's hell," Marcus said. He had moved to stand beside Sarah. "You're keeping them in the worst moment of their lives forever. The moment of uncertainty. The moment of fear and change and not knowing. That's torture, not mercy." Other guests joined them, forming a line between Mr. Graves and his door. Elena, Robert, Jennifer. One by one they stood together. "We're not going into room 101, Sarah said. "And we're not staying in your in-between space. We're leaving, all of us." "Impossible." Mr. Graves's multiple voices grew louder, angrier. "The motel has never released a guest. Once you check in, you're mine until you fade completely and accept room 101. Those are the rules. Those have always been the rules." "Then we'll break the rules," Sarah said. She turned to the others. "Remember your choices. Remember who you decided to be. Hold on to that identity with everything you have. Don't let the motel pull you back into uncertainty. Be whole, be complete, be undeniably, completely yourselves." Mr. Graves screamed, a sound like tearing metal and breaking glass. The floating door began to multiply. Suddenly there were dozens of doors, hundreds, all marked with 101, all opening onto that terrible void. The whispers became shouts, became demands. "Enter, transform, become. Enter, transform, become." The cold intensified. The ground beneath them began to crack. The motel was fighting back with everything it had. The guests held hands, forming a circle, each person clinging to their chosen identity, refusing to be pulled back into transition. And then something extraordinary happened. Jennifer began to glow, just slightly, just a faint light emanating from her skin. She was an artist. She had chosen it. She believed it. She was it completely and totally. And that certainty, that wholeness, was creating a light that the motel couldn't absorb. One by one, the others began to glow too. Marcus, accepting his role as a flawed but present father. Elena, claiming her freedom. Robert, embracing his failure and choosing to start fresh. And Sarah, who realized in that moment what she needed to be. Not the failed wife who had run from Lowe's angels. Not the person who wanted to disappear and start over. But someone who acknowledged both her past and her future and existed firmly in the present moment. Sarah Chen. Just Sarah Chen. Divorced but not ashamed. Unemployed but not defeated. Traveling but not running. Whole. The light from the 14 guests grew brighter. The doors of room 101 began to flicker and fade. Mr. Graves was screaming, his form distorting. The facade of the pleasant desk clerk melting away to reveal something ancient and hungry underneath. "You can't leave," the voices shrieked. "You're mine, you belong to the motel, you belong to transition, you belong to the in-between." "No," Sarah said simply, "we belong to ourselves." The light exploded outward. The doors shattered. Mr. Graves dissolved into smoke and shadow. And the Nightfall Motel began to shake, its walls cracking, its foundation crumbling. The courtyard beneath their feet split open, and through the crack Sarah saw something impossible. Route 66, the highway, actual pavement, the way out. "Run," she shouted. They ran toward the crack in reality, toward the highway that was becoming visible through the breaking illusion of the motel. Behind them, the building was collapsing in on itself. The 1950s facade crumbling to reveal nothing underneath. It had never been real, just a projection, a trap made of belief and uncertainty. They leaped through the crack and landed hard on hot pavement, real pavement. The sun was overhead, The real sun, not the artificial light of the motel. The desert stretched around them, the real desert. And behind them, where the Nightfall Motel had stood, there was nothing but empty space and a faded sign lying in the dirt. Vacancy. They had escaped, all 14 of them, whole, complete, free. But as Sarah caught her breath and looked at her fellow survivors, she realized something. They had won. They had escaped. But the motel wasn't destroyed. It was just dormant, waiting. And somewhere on some highway in some moment of transition, it would appear again. The Nightfall Motel was eternal, and it was always ready to welcome new guests. In Part 5, we follow what happens to the survivors after their escape, and discover that leaving the motel doesn't mean leaving behind what they experienced there. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. Checkout is just the beginning. The Nightfall Motel, Part 5 of 10. Welcome back to the unsettling lullaby. 14 souls escaped the Nightfall Motel by becoming whole, shattering the illusion that trapped them. Today, we discover that leaving the motel doesn't mean leaving behind what they experienced, and that the motel may not be done with them yet. This is Part 5. I am with you, and the aftermath begins now. They stood on Route 66 in the blazing New Mexico sun. 14 people who had been trapped in an impossible place and somehow made it out. Their cars were there, parked along the shoulder of the highway as if they had simply pulled over for a rest. Keys in pockets, phones in cars, everything exactly as they had left it. Except time had passed. Sarah's phone, when she turned it on, showed June 7, 2019. 4 days since she'd checked in. 4 days that had felt like an eternity but had passed in the outside world as if she'd merely taken a long weekend detour. Marcus's phone showed a date that made him sink to his knees. June 3, 2019. The day of his daughter's wedding. The same day he had checked into the motel. For him, months had passed inside the Nightfall. But out here, no time had passed at all. He had missed nothing. He could still make it to the wedding if he drove fast. Alina's phone showed April 21, 2019, just 1 day after she checked in. Robert's showed January 29, 2019, the day after he'd entered the motel, despite his 5-month stay inside. Each person's outside time was different, unrelated to how long they'd been trapped. The motel existed outside normal time, and returning to reality meant returning to whenever the motel decided. It's like we stepped out of time, Dr. Lynn said. She was one of the guests Sarah hadn't interacted with much during their captivity, a physicist who had been at the motel for 3 months. Or into a pocket where time moved differently. The motel wasn't just a physical trap, it was a temporal one. They stood together on the highway, unsure what to do next. Should they call the police? Report what happened? But what would they report? That they'd been trapped in a magical motel that existed outside of time and space. That they'd escaped by choosing to be whole. Who would believe them? We should stay in touch, Sarah said finally. Exchange numbers, email addresses. We went through something no one else will ever understand. We need each other. They agreed. They exchanged contact information, made promises to check in on each other, formed a bond that trauma creates. Then one by one, they got into their cars and drove away, back to their lives, back to the people they had been running from or running toward, back to reality. Sarah drove east. She had been heading east before the motel caught her, and she continued that journey. She drove for hours, putting distance between herself and that empty stretch of desert. She stopped at a normal motel that night, a Best Western in Albuquerque, and found herself unable to sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like Mr. Graves. She kept checking the door to make sure it was locked from the inside, not the outside. The next morning, she called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting by his phone. "Did you make it to the wedding?" Sarah asked. "Yeah," his voice was thick with emotion. "I walked her down the aisle, I gave the speech, I cried like a baby, and you know what? I told her everything, told her I'd almost missed it, told her I'd been running scared, told her about the motel. She didn't believe the motel part, obviously. Thought I'd had some kind of breakdown, but she believed that I'd been scared. And she forgave me. We're okay now. I'm glad, Sarah said, and she meant it. Are you experiencing anything weird since you got out? There was a long pause. What do you mean weird? I keep seeing things, flickers, like the motel is still there in the corner of my vision. And I hear Mr. Graves sometimes, his voice, saying my name. But when I turn around, there's nothing there. Yeah, Marcus admitted quietly. Yeah, I'm getting that too. Thought I was losing my mind. Over the next few days, Sarah called the other survivors. They were all experiencing the same thing. Visions of the motel, whispers in the night, a sense that they were being watched. Alina woke up one morning to find a brass key on her nightstand, room 217, Sarah's old room number. She hadn't brought it with her. She'd left it at the motel when they escaped. But there it was, sitting on her nightstand like it had never left her. Robert found a guest registry page in his briefcase. It showed his name with that symbol next to it, the circle with a line through it. The symbol marking people who never checked out. But he had checked out. He'd escaped. So why was his name still marked? Jennifer had it worst. She started sleepwalking. Her roommate found her standing in the parking lot of their apartment building at 3 a.m., saying over and over, "Room 101, time to check in. Room 101, time to check in." She didn't remember doing it. 2 weeks after the escape, Sarah organized a video call with all 14 survivors. They needed to talk. They needed to figure out what was happening. "The motel is trying to pull us back," Dr. Lynn said. She looked haggard, dark circles under her eyes. "We escaped, but we're not free. We're still connected to it somehow." "How is that possible?" Alina asked. "We made ourselves whole. We broke its hold on us." "Did we?" Dr. Lynn countered. "Or did we just damage it enough to slip through a crack? Think about it. The motel has been feeding on people for decades. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands. All that accumulated energy, all those trapped consciousness, we disrupted it, but did we destroy it?" Sarah thought about the sign lying in the dirt. Vacancy. The motel had collapsed, but it hadn't disappeared. It had just retreated, gone dormant, waiting. "It wants us back," Sarah said. "It spent days, weeks, months feeding on us, building connections to our consciousness. And now we're out here in the real world, still connected to it by invisible threads. And it's pulling on those threads, trying to reel us back in." "So what do we do?" Marcus asked. "How do we cut the threads?" Before anyone could answer, Jennifer's video feed went dark. Then it came back on, but something was wrong. Jennifer was in her room, but the room looked different. The walls were the wrong color. The furniture was wrong. And behind her, visible through her doorway, was a hallway. A hallway that shouldn't exist in a modern apartment building. A hallway with brown doors and brass numbers. "Jennifer," Sarah said urgently, "where are you?" Jennifer looked confused. "I'm in my apartment. Why?" "Look behind you. Look at your doorway." Jennifer turned. When she saw the hallway, she screamed. She jumped up from her desk and ran to the door, slamming it shut. But when she turned back to her computer, her room had changed. The walls were turquoise now. The bed had a faded floral bedspread. On the nightstand was a Gideon Bible. "No," Jennifer sobbed. No, I'm back in the motel. How am I back?" "You're not back," Dr. Lynn said quickly. "You're in both places simultaneously. The motel is overlapping with your apartment. It's creating a bridge. You need to choose. Choose your apartment. Choose reality. Be completely present in the real world." Jennifer closed her eyes, breathing hard. "I'm in my apartment. I'm in Seattle. I'm in my apartment. I'm not in the motel. I'm not." The turquoise walls faded. The modern apartment walls returned. The hallway beyond her door became her normal apartment hallway. Jennifer opened her eyes and collapsed in relief. "It almost got me," she whispered. "I could feel it pulling. It was so strong." "This is going to keep happening," Sarah realized. "To all of us. The motel is going to keep trying to pull us back. And eventually one of us is going to be too tired or too weak to resist, and we'll slip back into that place. So we fight it, Marcus said. Every day, every time we feel the pull, we remind ourselves who we are, we stay whole, we stay present, we don't let it win. That's not a solution, Alina said. That's just surviving. We can't spend the rest of our lives fighting off a supernatural motel. There has to be a way to sever the connection permanently. Dr. Lin was typing furiously on her computer. I've been researching, looking into the history of Route 66, into temporal anomalies, into reports of places that exist outside normal space, and I found something. The Nightfall Motel isn't unique. There are dozens of places like it, waypoints, thin spots where reality bleeds into something else. Most of them are harmless, but some of them are predatory. They trap people, feed on them. How do you destroy a place like that? Robert asked. You don't, Dr. Lin said. Not permanently. They're too connected to the fabric of space-time, but you can seal them, make them inaccessible. There are rituals, procedures. Most of them are folklore, but folklore usually has a kernel of truth. I think we can seal the Nightfall Motel. Make it so it can't reach out to us anymore. Make it so it can't trap anyone else. How? Sarah asked. We have to go back. The silence that followed was heavy. None of them wanted to go back. The thought of returning to that place, of stepping onto that patch of desert where the motel waited, was terrifying. There's no other way, Dr. Lin continued. To seal it, we need to be physically present. We need to close the doorway from the outside, all of us, together, just like we escaped together. And if it traps us again, Alina asked, if we go back and it catches us, then we stay whole, Sarah said. We remember who we are. We don't slip back into uncertainty. And we seal that place permanently so no one else has to go through what we went through. They voted. It wasn't unanimous. Several people refused, too traumatized to even consider returning. But 8 of them agreed to go back. 8 people who would drive back to that spot on Route 66, back to the empty desert where the Nightfall Motel waited in its dormant state, back to the place that had tried to consume them. Sarah, Marcus, Alina, Robert, Jennifer, Dr. Lin, and 2 others, David Park and Maria Rodriguez, who had been quiet during captivity but were determined to help now. They planned to meet in 3 days at a truck stop 50 miles from the motel's location. They would go together. They would seal the doorway. They would end this. But as Sarah ended the video call and sat alone in her hotel room, she couldn't shake the feeling that the motel knew. That somewhere in that space between spaces, Mr. Graves was smiling his perfect smile, watching them make their plans, waiting for them to return. Because the Nightfall Motel always got its guests eventually, check-in was easy, check-out was impossible, and return was inevitable. In Part 6, the survivors return to the motel's location to attempt the sealing ritual and discover that the motel has been expecting them. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. The return is coming. The Nightfall Motel, Part 6 of 10. Welcome back to the unsettling lullaby. 8 survivors have agreed to return to the location where the Nightfall Motel once stood, determined to seal it permanently. Today, they discover the motel has been waiting for them, and it's stronger than before. This is Part 6. I am with you, and the return begins now. June 21, 2019, 3 weeks after the escape. 8 cars converged on a truck stop 50 miles from the motel's last known location. Sarah arrived first, parking under the harsh fluorescent lights. She'd barely slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw turquoise walls and brass door numbers. She heard Mr. Graves's voice whispering in her dreams. Room 101. It's time. Room 101. Marcus pulled in next, then Alina, then the others. They gathered in a corner booth of the truck stop diner, ordering coffee they didn't drink, speaking in low voices about what they were about to do. Dr. Lin spread papers across the table, printouts of folklore, occult texts, academic papers about spatial anomalies. The ritual is simple in concept, difficult in execution. We need to create a boundary, a circle of salt and iron around the location where the motel manifests. Then we anchor it with objects of personal significance, things that represent who we are now, our whole selves. The combination should seal the doorway, make it impossible for the motel to reach into our reality. And if it doesn't work? David Park asked. He was a quiet man in his 30s who had barely spoken during their captivity, but his eyes were sharp, analytical. He'd been a software engineer before the motel trapped him, and he approached problems with logic and precision. If it doesn't work, Dr. Lin said honestly, the motel will trap us again, and this time we might not escape. Maria Rodriguez leaned forward. She was a highway patrol officer who had checked into the motel after a long shift, just wanting a place to rest. I've been thinking about this. What if the motel wants us to come back? What if this whole thing, the visions, the pull, the feeling that we need to seal it, what if that's the trap? What if it's calling us back on purpose? The table went silent. They had all been so focused on the idea of sealing the motel that none of them had considered the possibility that the motel wanted them to return. It's possible, Sarah admitted. But what's the alternative? We spend the rest of our lives fighting it off. Eventually, we'll get tired, we'll slip, and it'll pull us back one by one anyway. At least this way, we're going in together prepared with a plan. They finished their coffee and left. 8 vehicles in convoy, driving down Route 66 as the sun climbed higher in the desert sky. Sarah led the way, following her GPS to the coordinates where the motel had been. But when they arrived, there was nothing there, just desert, no sign, no foundation, no indication that a building had ever stood in this spot, just sand, rocks, and scrub brush stretching to the horizon. They parked and got out. The heat hit them immediately. It was over 100 degrees, the sun beating down mercilessly. Dr. Lin checked her instruments. This is it. This is definitely the location. I triangulated it from our GPS data when we escaped. So where's the motel? Jennifer asked, shading her eyes and looking around. It's dormant, Dr. Lin said. Waiting, but it's here, we just can't see it. They unloaded supplies from their vehicles, bags of salt, iron rods, personal objects they brought to anchor the ritual. Marcus had brought his daughter's wedding invitation. Elena brought the restraining order she'd filed against her husband, finally filed, finally made official. Robert brought a business license for his new company, starting fresh. Jennifer brought a painting she'd created, her first piece as a declared artist. Sarah had brought the divorce papers she'd finally signed, not running from her marriage anymore, not pretending it didn't exist, just done with it, complete, whole. They began to create the circle. Dr. Lin directed them, using her research to guide the placement of the salt and iron. They worked for over an hour under the brutal sun, forming a large circle about 50 yards in diameter, centered on the spot where the motel office had stood. As they worked, Sarah began to feel it, a pulling sensation, a whisper at the edge of her consciousness. The motel was waking up. It knew they were here. Hurry, she said, it's coming. They placed their personal objects at 8 points around the circle, north, south, east, west, and the points in between. Each object represented a choice, an identity, a completion of transformation. Each object was an anchor to reality, to wholeness, to who they had become. Dr. Lin stood in the center of the circle and began to speak the words she'd found in her research. They were in a language Sarah didn't recognize, something old, something that predated English and Spanish and probably predated anything that had been spoken on this continent. The words felt heavy, substantial, like they had weight and power. The air inside the circle began to shimmer. The temperature dropped suddenly, going from over 100 degrees to what felt like 50 in a matter of seconds. And then they saw it. The Nightfall Motel, appearing like a photograph developing. First faint and translucent, then more solid, more real. The turquoise walls, the brown doors, The empty pool, the office with its wood paneling and ancient computer, all of it materializing inside the circle they had created. And standing in the office doorway was Mr. Graves. He looked at them with those black eyes and smiled. "Welcome back," his multiple voices said. "I knew you would return, you always do. Everyone always does." "We're not here to check in," Sarah called out. "We're here to seal you, to make sure you can never trap anyone again." Mr. Graves laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass and tearing metal. "Seal me? You think your salt and iron can contain me? I am older than your words, older than your rituals. I existed before your species learned to travel. I will exist long after you're gone." Dr. Lin continued speaking the words of the ritual, her voice growing louder. The motel flickered, becoming less solid. Mr. Graves's smile faltered. "No," he said. The playfulness was gone from his voices, replaced by anger. "No, you don't understand what you're doing. If you seal me here, if you trap me in your circle, I will never stop trying to escape. I will reach out through every crack, every weak point in your reality. I will haunt you forever." "Better that than letting you trap more people," Marcus said. The motel began to pulse, expanding and contracting like something breathing. The doors started opening and closing rapidly, and from inside the rooms, Sarah saw them. The others, the 327 people marked in the registry, the ones who had gone into room 101. They were still there, still trapped, still existing in that horrible in-between state. "You can't save them," Mr. Graves said, following Sarah's gaze. "They're part of me now, part of the motel. They've been consumed. There's nothing left to save." But Sarah saw something in their eyes, awareness. They weren't completely gone. Some part of them remained trapped in suffering. "What if we could free them?" Sarah said suddenly. "What if sealing the motel isn't the answer? What if we need to destroy it completely?" "You can't," Dr. Lin said. "I researched this extensively. Places like this can't be destroyed. They're part of the fabric of space-time. You can only seal them." "But what if we could?" Sarah turned to the others. "What if we went inside, all of us, together, and we freed everyone trapped in there? All 327 souls. If we could make them whole, complete their transformations, then there'd be nothing for the motel to feed on. It would starve. It would collapse." "That's insane," David said. "We barely escaped the first time. You want to walk back involuntarily." "I want to save them," Sarah said. "They're people. They were just like us, running from something, looking for a fresh start. And they got trapped. If we can free them, we have to try." Alina stepped forward. "She's right. We can't just seal the motel and leave all those people inside. That's not justice. That's not even mercy. That's just convenient." One by one, the others agreed. They had escaped. They had become whole. And now they would go back in, not as victims, but as rescuers. They would free the trapped souls and starve the motel of its power. Dr. Lin looked at them like they were insane. "This is suicide. The motel is strongest inside. Once you enter, it will fight to keep you. You might not escape a second time." "Then we don't escape," Marcus said. "We win. We go in there and we free everyone. And then we all walk out together, all 335 of us. And the motel collapses because it has nothing left to feed on." Mr. Graves was watching them with an expression Sarah couldn't read. Not anger anymore, something else. Fear. Could a place like this feel fear? "You don't know what you're proposing," Mr. Graves said. "Room 101 isn't just a room, it's a state of being. Those people aren't trapped in a physical space. They're trapped in a moment, the moment of transformation. To free them, you would have to enter that moment with them. Experience what they experienced, feel what they felt, and survive it." "Then that's what we'll do," Sarah said. She walked toward the motel. The salt circle they'd created should have prevented her from entering. It was designed to contain the motel, keep it from reaching out. But Sarah wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to enter, and the circle didn't stop her. The others followed. 8 people walking voluntarily into the Nightfall Motel, past Mr. Graves's shocked expression, through the office, down the hallway toward the rooms. Toward room 101. The door at the end of the hall had no number on it this time. It didn't need one. They all knew where it led. Sarah reached for the handle. "Wait," Mr. Graves said. His voice was different now. Singular, human, afraid. "If you do this, if you free them all, the motel will collapse completely. And I will collapse with it. I will cease to exist." "Good," Sarah said, and she opened the door. Beyond it was the void she'd seen before. The space of swirling darkness and impossible colors. But this time, she could see more. She could see the people. All 327 of them, suspended in that terrible in-between moment, trapped forever in the worst second of their lives. Sarah stepped through, the others followed, and the door closed behind them. They were inside room 101, inside the moment of transformation, inside the heart of the Nightfall Motel, and now they would either free everyone or join them in eternal suspension. In Part 7, Sarah and the others navigate the impossible space of room 101, confronting each trapped soul and helping them complete their transformation. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. The final battle begins. The Nightfall Motel, Part 8 of 10. Welcome back to the unsettling lullaby. The Nightfall Motel has been destroyed, the trapped souls freed, and the survivors have returned to their lives. Today, we discover that destroying one waypoint has consequences no one anticipated, and that the motel may not have been the only predator on Route 66. This is Part 8, I Am With You, and the aftermath unfolds now. 3 months after the destruction of the Nightfall Motel, Sarah Chen was living in Denver. She had found a job as a freelance writer, rented a small apartment, and was slowly building a new life. She kept in touch with the other survivors through a group chat they had created. They checked in on each other daily, making sure everyone was okay, making sure no one was being pulled back into impossible places. They all seemed to be doing well. Marcus had reconciled fully with his daughter and was helping plan his first grandchild's nursery. Elena had started a support group for domestic violence survivors. Robert's new business was thriving. Jennifer had her first gallery showing. They had survived. They had won. But then the reports started coming in. It began with a post on a paranormal investigation forum that Dr. Lin sent to the group chat. Has anyone else noticed an increase in disappearances along Route 66? People are reporting missing travelers, abandoned cars, stories that sound familiar. Sarah clicked the link and felt her blood run cold. In the 3 months since they had destroyed the Nightfall Motel, there had been 23 reported disappearances along Route 66. All of them followed the same pattern: travelers driving alone at night, last seen at rest stops or gas stations, cars found abandoned, no signs of struggle, just gone. That can't be a coincidence, Marcus wrote in the group chat. 23 people in 3 months. That's more than the motel took in years. Sarah started researching. She called police departments along Route 66, claimed to be a journalist writing a story about highway safety. What she learned was disturbing. The disappearances weren't random. They were concentrated in specific areas, places where Route 66 passed through isolated stretches of desert, places that felt similar to where the Nightfall Motel had been. Waypoints. Dr. Lin had mentioned them before, places where reality was thin, where the boundary between one world and another grew weak. The Nightfall Motel had been one waypoint, but Dr. Lin had said there were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. And by destroying the Nightfall Motel, they had created a vacuum. They had removed one predator from the ecosystem, and now others were moving in to fill the empty space. Sarah called an emergency video meeting with all 14 original survivors, not just the 8 who had gone back, but all of them. She needed everyone's perspective on this. We made a mistake, Sarah said when everyone was on the call. We destroyed the Nightfall Motel, but we didn't think about the consequences. That motel was feeding on maybe 20 or 30 people per decade. These new disappearances, 23 in 3 months, we made things worse. How could we have made things worse? Jennifer asked. We freed over 300 trapped souls. We saved people. But we didn't seal the waypoint, Dr. Lin explained. The Nightfall Motel was occupying that thin space, that weak spot in reality. It was predatory, yes, but it was also stable. It had rules. And by destroying it without properly sealing the location, we left that weak spot open. And now other things are using it. Things that might be worse than the motel. What kind of things? Alina asked quietly. Dr. Lin pulled up a map on her screen. She had marked every disappearance along Route 66 in the past 3 months. The markers formed a pattern. They were all clustered around the location where the Nightfall Motel had been. A 50-mile radius, centered on that empty patch of desert. Something is using that location as a doorway, Dr. Lin said, or multiple somethings. The motel was a single entity with a single purpose. These new disappearances feel different, more chaotic, more aggressive. I think we didn't just destroy a predator, we destroyed a gatekeeper. Sarah felt sick. The motel was keeping other things out. It had claimed that territory, and when we destroyed it, we opened the door to everything else. So what do? Marcus asked. Do we go back? Do we try to seal it properly this time? I don't think sealing it is enough anymore, Dr. Lin said. The damage is done. That location is now a known weak spot, a proven doorway. Things will keep trying to use it. What we need is a new gatekeeper, something to occupy that space and keep it stable. You want us to create a new Nightfall Motel? David asked incredulously. After everything we went through. Not like the motel, Dr. Lin clarified, but something. Some kind of presence that can occupy that waypoint and prevent other things from using it. Something that won't trap people but will guard the doorway. And who would do that? Maria asked. Who would voluntarily become a gatekeeper for a thin spot in reality? That's asking someone to give up their life, their humanity to become. What? A living barrier. The video call went silent. No one wanted to volunteer for something like that. No one wanted to become what Thomas Graves had been, a consciousness tied to a location, existing for decades as something other than human. But someone had to do it, because the disappearances were continuing. More people were vanishing, and it was their fault. They had destroyed the motel without understanding the consequences, and now innocent people were paying the price. I'll do it, a voice said. Everyone looked at their screens, trying to identify who had spoken. It was Thomas Graves. He had been invited to the call. He was a survivor too, in his own way. I'll go back, Thomas continued. I was the motel for 70 years. I understand how it works. I know how to occupy that space. But this time I'll do it right. I won't trap people. I won't feed on transformation. I'll just stand guard, keep other things from using that doorway. It's my responsibility. I created that place. I let it become what it became. Let me fix it. Thomas, that's asking you to give up your humanity again, Sarah said. You just got it back. You just became a person again after 70 years. I know, Thomas said, but I wasn't a very good person before I became the motel. Maybe this is what I'm meant to be, a guardian, a gatekeeper. It's not a life, but it's a purpose. And after 70 years of causing harm, maybe I can spend the next 70 years preventing it. They debated for hours. Some argued that Thomas deserved a chance at a normal life. Others argued that he was right. It was his responsibility to fix what he had created. And some, like Sarah, wondered if there was another way. Some solution that didn't require anyone to sacrifice their humanity. But in the end, they couldn't find one. The waypoint needed a guardian, and Thomas was the only one who understood how to do it. They drove back to the location 1 week later, all 14 survivors plus Thomas Graves. They stood in the desert where the Nightfall Motel had been, where the ruins still lay scattered across the sand. Thomas stood in the center of the ruins and closed his eyes. I remember how it felt, he said. Becoming the motel, spreading my consciousness across the space, becoming part of the location instead of just being in it. I think I can do it again, but different this time. Better. Wait, Sarah said. She had been thinking about this all week. What if you don't have to do it alone? What if we helped, all of us? We all have a connection to this place now. We were all trapped here. We all escaped. What if we pooled our consciousness, shared the burden? No one person becomes the motel. We all become it together, a collective guardian instead of a single one. Dr. Lin was nodding. That could work. A distributed consciousness. Each of us maintaining part of the waypoint. Taking turns, maybe. Rotating the responsibility so no one person has to bear it all the time. Like a neighborhood watch, Marcus said, but for reality. They formed a circle around the ruins. 14 people, all of them touched by the Nightfall Motel, all of them changed by it. They held hands, and together they reached out with their consciousness, the way they had learned to do in room 101. They connected to the location, to the thin spot, to the waypoint. They felt it, the weak place in reality where things could slip through. They felt other things pressing against it, trying to use it, trying to enter. And they stood guard. Not as a building, not as a motel, just as a presence, a barrier, a line that said no further. They didn't trap anyone, they didn't feed on anyone, they just watched, guarded, protected. Sarah felt her consciousness expand to include the others. 14 minds working as one. 14 guardians sharing the burden. She was still herself, still Sarah Chen, living in Denver, working as a writer. But part of her was always here now, always watching the waypoint, always making sure nothing came through. It was strange, uncomfortable, like being in two places at once, but it was manageable and it was necessary. The disappearances along Route 66 stopped. No more abandoned cars, no more missing travelers. The waypoint was guarded now, protected, safe. But Sarah wondered how long they could maintain it. Days, months, years, forever. They had taken on a responsibility that might never end. They were the new Nightfall Motel, not a trap but a barrier, not predators but protectors. And somewhere in the collective consciousness they now shared, Sarah felt Thomas Graves's gratitude. He wasn't alone anymore. None of them were. They were guardians together. But guarding a waypoint meant understanding it. And the more Sarah connected to that thin spot in reality, the more she understood. This wasn't the only one. Dr. Lin had been right. There were dozens of waypoints, maybe hundreds, all along Route 66, all across America, all around the world. Some were guarded, some were sealed, some were occupied by things like the Nightfall Motel, predators that fed on travelers, and some were completely unprotected, open, vulnerable, used by things that made the Nightfall Motel look merciful by comparison. The 14 guardians had protected one waypoint, but how many more were out there? How many more needed guardians? How many more places were trapping or consuming or transforming people in the spaces between? In Part 9, the guardians discover they're not alone. There are others like them, protecting other waypoints. And they learn about an organization that has been fighting these predatory places for centuries. Subscribe to the unsettling lullaby. The network reveals itself.